Hey there, it's Bud Kraus for InstaWP, and let's have a look at what's new in WordPress 6.6. First, the big picture. Now, this is the second of 3 major releases in 2024, and with all major releases, you can expect there to be improvements in accessibility, bug fixes, and security holes patched under the hood. This release really focuses in on improving what is already in WordPress. But if you're a designer or a site maker, I think you're going to find some things here that you're going to like. And as in previous releases, 6.6 shows us the way to a possible new look for the WP admin. Now, here are some changes that are mostly for developers. Well, there's now an easier way to add meta boxes and custom fields to the right sidebar for your plugins and themes. Theme authors can now suggest block style variations just the way they do for global style variations in their themes. And speaking of theme developers, you can now suggest color and typography presets. As a designer or site builder, you'll find those in the style section of the site editor. There's now a really good way to add custom aspect ratios for images, the featured image, and the cover block image. There's a cleaner, more elegant, more efficient way of writing CSS now because of the revision in CSS specificity. We now have a class assigned to the list block, so it'll make lists a lot easier to style. We now have a fix for padding for child elements so that when they stretch to full width, they will stretch to the same dimension as their containing element. The HTML and interactivity APIs have been updated. The theme.json file now has a 3rd version, and WordPress 6.6 drops support for PHP 7.0 and 7.1. And now what about site builders? Well, here are some things I'm not going to demonstrate. You can now add a page background image. Saving and publishing functionality is pretty uniform now across the WP admin. And now there's a much better way to access the patterns page in the WP admin if you're using a classic theme. So what am I going to demonstrate? Well, first, the synced pattern overrides, or just pattern overrides, or partially synced patterns. You'll see in just a minute what I'm talking about. The new grid block. Negative margins have come to WordPress. An update to the post editor and the page editor as well. Here I'm speaking of the right sidebar. I'm going to show you what I mean. And finally, new and improved user experiences in the site editor. Now, yes, I'm going to be showing you WordPress 6.6, and I will be demonstrating it with the 2024 theme. Let's have a look. WordPress 6.6 comes with a highly anticipated new feature called Synced Pattern Overrides, or Pattern Overrides, or Partially Synced Patterns. Take your pick. They all mean the same thing, and you can create these whether you're using a block theme like I am here, or a classic theme. So here I am in the site editor. I'm going to go into the pattern section, and I'm going to start a new pattern. And I'm going to give it a name. I'm just going to call this artist box, and you'll see why in a bit. I could assign it a category that is already in existence, or I can create a new category, but I'm not. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. And here's something that's very important. Leave this toggled on as a synced pattern. Okay, I'm going to add and begin, and I'm going to make a group block, so let's just start off with the group block. And I'm going to give this a background color, make it a little easier to see, and inside I'm going to add a columns block that will have 2 columns, 50% width for each column. In this first column here, I am going to add an image block, and actually I'm going to leave it just like this as a placeholder. This will speed up your workflow when you work with images in this pattern. And if you're not familiar with image placeholders, you can see it's easy to recognize. You'll always see a diagonal line like this. So now I'm going to add a heading right over here. And I'm not even going to put anything in there. Just leave it as heading. And right below that, let me add some paragraph text, which will remain the same wherever I use this pattern. And the paragraph text, no matter where it's going to be used, will always say, today we are featuring one of our favorite authors who has been a longtime member. And now what we're going to do is go back to this image right over here, or the image placeholder. And over here, I'm going to click on Advanced. And here's something that's new where it says Overrides. I want to enable the override for this block, meaning the image. And we're going to give it a name. And let's just call it Artist Pics or Picture, however you like. Doesn't really matter. And then over here for the heading, I want to do the same thing. I'm going to go over here to Advanced. And I am going to enable overrides for this block, and I'm just going to call this heading. And we're going to say, okay. And finally, let's save it. And now we're ready for use. So here we are in the first of the 2 blog posts that I created for my artists. And I want to insert that synced pattern override into this. Go into Patterns, My Patterns. And here's the pattern I created. And that's just what I wanted. Let's close the inserter. And what I'm going to do here is just add my image of Sheila. And then for the heading, I'm just going to type in Sheila. And of course, this paragraph here is locked in essence. I can't change that. And neither can I change anything else. Just the image and just the heading as you saw. And with this, I'm happy, so I'm going to save it. I'm going to go on to the other blog post and do much the same thing. So for here, now this time, instead of going into the inserter, I'm just going to type in the slash and then artist box, much faster. In this case, I'm going to replace the placeholder with the image. And this one is Bill, or anything I want to put in for the heading. Now let's have a look in more detail of the unique characteristics of the pattern override. And of course, we're talking about the group block here. I'm going to select this over here and just come up over here and have a look right over here. And you can see under the block, it's just the artist box, which I created, and 2 areas that can be edited, and that's it. And of course, one is the image and the heading for the pattern, and that's it. I can't change the color. I can't change the paragraph text. That's all I can change. Now, if I wanted to reset all of this and start all over again, well, let's have a look. I'm going to select the box like this, and I'm going to select Reset. You can see I started all over again if I want, which I don't want to do. I just wanted to show you that you can do that. Now, suppose I want to detach this from the pattern. Easy enough. Just like any pattern, it can be detached like so. Go over here, click on Detach, and now you can edit this and not affect any pattern or any other instance where this pattern was used. So I can change this, I can change Bill, I can even change the paragraph text, the color, the whole thing. Well, I really don't want that either. I want to stay attached. So I am going to undo that. And I want to show you, if I click on this over here, right over here, Edit Original. So this is really important. And this is the way in which I can change the pattern and have every instance of it where it was used changed throughout the site. So for example, suppose I wanted to put a background now to my heading. Well, I'm going to do that and change the background to this, like so. And I'm going to save this. And now let's have a look at what happened. So here we are with Bill. Okay. And, of course, here we are with Sheila. So even after I've created this pattern, I can go back, edit the pattern, and then every instance of where that pattern was used can be edited. And that's an overview of what the pattern override or partially synced pattern override, or however you want to describe it, can do. If you're a designer, chances are you're going to love the grid block. Let me show you how it works. I'm going to insert the grid block right here. And inside the grid block, I'm going to add 5 blocks, 2 of them images and 3 of them paragraphs. Let's start right over here and let's add our image. And right next to that, I am going to add a paragraph. And let's give a background to this paragraph to make it easier to see. And next to that, I'm going to add another paragraph. Now, sometimes it's hard to figure out how to do that. So best thing to do is just click on the grid block icon, as I did. And right over here, you can see the inserter button. Put that paragraph in here like so. And we're going to make this a little bit smaller. Now, after that, I want to add 2 more columns. So I am going to just hit my return key. And for this, I'm going to put in an image. That's good. And over here, to the right of that, I'm going to put in a paragraph. Again, what I'm going to do is just select this over here. And there we go. Put in my paragraph. And also give this a background color as well. Let's have a look at what we've done. Here's the list view. And you can see that within the grid block, here are my 5 elements, 2 images and 3 paragraphs. Notice the efficiency of the grid block. That is, the markup in here is very elegant. There isn't the need for any nesting blocks. It's just the grid block and the 5 blocks the way I have inserted them to this point. Let's close the list view, and now let's have a look at the grid block toolbar. And there really isn't much in the toolbar. You have the standard widths that you see for most blocks in WordPress. But now let's have a look at the grid block settings over here in the inspector in the right sidebar. So for that, I'm just going to click on the entire grid block, and I'm going to have a look right over here. And as you can see right over here, here's the grid block selected. Now, it's just a variation of the group block, actually. And here's the group block. If I wanted to switch over to that, I could, but I want to stay with the grid block. All right, here's something that's really important. The grid block has 2 types, the auto and the manual. First, let's look at the auto, which is the default. And the default sets the minimum column width at 12 REMs. If I want to change the unit of measurement, well, I can change to pixels or to regular Ms. And the minimum column width can be adjusted either by entering a different value in here or by using this slider. And now you can see I'm up to 15 REMs, bigger column widths. I'm just going to keep it at 12. That's fine. Now, one of the great things about grid layout is that you can easily drag and drop into position the elements within. What am I talking about? Let's have a look at this image right over here. I'm just going to drag this like so into this position. So what's going on here? This image is spanning this row and these 2 columns. I'm going to do much the same for this image over here. Just going to drag this into place like this. This image is spanning these 2 fictitious columns and this fictitious row. How do I know for sure? If I look into the settings over here, I'll see that we have spanning 2 columns and 1 row. If you're familiar with how table-based layout worked back in the old days, that's pretty much what you're seeing here. Don't worry, we're not going back to that. One other change I want to make is I just want to take this over here, because this is just too much fun, and drag this into position like so. How does this work in mobile? We're just going to jump right into mobile right over here. And the stacking order is pretty much as you would expect. That's fine. Now, I mentioned there were two types of grid layouts, auto and manual. Let's have a look at the other one, manual. Okay, well, here I am back in the grid block settings over here, and you can see auto. We've looked at that. Let's look at manual. In this case, we can set the number of columns across our design. So I'm going to make it 5. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is just as I did before, I can just drag and drop like so. And I'm going to do the same over here. I'm going to move this. Now this paragraph actually now spans 3 columns and the 1 row over here. And this image is spanning 2 columns. That is these 2 columns over here. Now I don't like this. So one thing I can still do to move things around, how about if I just move like this? And I'm going to change the spanning property over here. Let's span 3 columns. And that's fine. And this jumped up over here. That's okay. I'll do this over here too. I'm going to just, because it's just a lot of fun and pretty easy. You don't have to really worry about the values over here. You can just go ahead and move this around. This is really nice, huh? Okay. How does this work in mobile? Not as well as auto. Let's have a look. Definitely not as good. I would say for now, stick to using the auto, and I think in future releases, the manual method, that is setting the number of columns, will be much better when it comes to responsive design. Now, can you use a grid block inside of a pattern override? Yes, you can, and you could also use what I'm about to show you in the next segment. Here's a nice little touch that I know designers especially are going to like, and that's the ability to add, if you will, negative margins to your design. Now, in this design here, I have a 2-column layout, and you can see I have an image on the left side, text on the right, and I'm going to move this paragraph over to the left so that it overlaps the image. A very nice little effect. So I am selecting the paragraph block itself, and then right over here in dimensions, I click the plus sign. I click margins because that's what I'm going to be working on. And then right over here, this little box, I'm going to click on that. And now since I want to affect the left margin, that is right over here, I want to select left. Now, if I choose the slider, here's what happens. Well, that's just adding margin on the left-hand side. But I want to add a negative margin. So for that, I'm going to click this little slider icon over here. And you have to manually enter in the dimension that you want to use. So in this case, I want to add, or if you will, subtract. So I'm going to put in 70, minus 70 pixels. And you can see you get this nice overlapping effect that you really couldn't do anyway without custom CSS until now. Negative margins can now be applied to most, if not all, text blocks. Now, here's a quality of life improvement that's coming to WordPress 6.6, and that's in the post editor. And the changes I'm going to show you really also apply to pages as well. And here's a side-by-side comparison. On the left side is WordPress 6.5, and on the right is WordPress 6.6. And you can see that when you think about it, a lot of this is really disorganized. Even though we're familiar with it, it's just not organized as well as it could be. Now, over here on the right side, this would be 6.6. You can see we now have a nice little icon over here representing a post title. And right at the very top, in a new position, is where you can insert your featured image. And if you like to do an excerpt, well, this is where you're going to put it right now, right off to the side. In fact, as you'll see, many of these options now have little flyout menus, such as this. That's a little different. URL has been renamed to link, and that's something you would expect over here. Author, the same thing. Template switching. It's just nice and clean. Now, what did stay the same? Well, categories and tags as well, as you would expect. As with the recent WordPress releases, 6.6 continues the work to improve the site editor experience and to give us a glimpse as to what the entire experience working with the WP admin will be like in the next few years. So here I am in the site editor, and I'm going to look at pages, and this is totally different. So here on the left-hand side, I don't have a list of pages. I have a list of the different kinds of page statuses. And if I select any one of these, it will tell me which, in this case, pages are scheduled to be published. And now right over here, if I want to create a new page, it's really simple. All I have to do is click on Create a Page, give it a name, click the Create button, and I'll be taken to the page editor to start my page. And right over here, I have these settings over here. With layout, these are the different kinds of displays I can have, and by default, it's set up as list. Right over here, the grid view looks like this. You don't see these 3 pages, but if I was using a featured image, you would. And we also have a table view, which looks a lot like WordPress does today. Let me go back to the list. In addition to the layout option, you've got a sorting option, so I can sort my pages by title, author, or date. I have a field option, so if I don't want to display the author and I don't want to display the status, I just remove them right over here. And if I want to set the number of items in my list, well, the current default is 20. I'll just leave it like that. Now, for each one of these entries, each one of these pages, I can select 3 dots. I could edit, view the revisions, rename, or move to trash. To edit a page, I can click on this pencil icon over here, or just simply click on the entire page and start to edit my page. Might we see something like this for all of our posts? Stay tuned. Now for patterns, if I go to My Patterns, well, if I want to bulk delete my patterns now, I can do that. I couldn't do that before. So I'm just selecting all 3 of these, and all I have to do is click down over here and I can trash these 3 patterns. Look for more functionality built into the site editor as we go forward with future releases of WordPress. What can we say about WordPress 6.6? Well, it's a smaller release. It's certainly smaller than what we saw in 6.5 and what we're going to see in 6.7. WordPress is definitely moving toward a more unified, universal user experience. So no matter what type of content you're working with, whether it's a page, post, pattern, template, or template part, the experience with working with these elements will all be the same. The grid block may very well be a game changer for many web designers. And of course, this sets the stage for WordPress 6.7, which we're likely to see in November 2024.